Welcome to the Career Changemaker podcast, where we focus on owning your career journey and making impact through the work that you do. Whether you're looking to pivot, transition into leadership, or reimagine your career completely, this podcast is for you. We'll unpack career development strategies, leadership insights, and the mindset shifts needed to thrive in your career. Being a career changemaker means taking control and shaping your professional path with intention. I'm your host, lawyer turned career and leadership development specialist, Janine Esbrand. So if you're ready for candid conversations that are going to help you grow, keep listening. Hello, and welcome back to the show. Super excited for another episode. And today we're going to be diving into a topic that so many high achievers can relate to, and that is burnout. So if you're someone who's constantly giving to your work, to your family, and to everyone else around you, but you're starting to feel a little drained, know that you are not alone. For me, I have a lot of energy. So I used to just believe that I could just keep pushing through, keep going and going and going. But I learned the hard way that you really can't pour from an empty cup. Balancing career ambitions and personal commitments can really take its toll. And sometimes we don't even realize how much is taking its toll until we're completely exhausted and our body forces us to just sit down somewhere. So in this episode, I'm going to share some of the lessons that I've learned along the way, and we'll explore how you can avoid burnout while still thriving in your career. So if you're ready for a real conversation about what it takes to show up fully in your life and your work, stay tuned. So there was a time a couple of years ago when I was running on empty. I was super passionate about building my coaching business and at the same time juggling being a parent to 2 young children. I pushed through. I would work very long hours. I would just show up wherever I needed to be. I was thinking that my success depended on constantly doing and getting everything done. But it didn't take long before I started to feel really anxious all of the time. I would wake up feeling anxious. I could feel the weight of everything on my shoulders, and I was literally exhausted. And I knew that something had to change when I realized that I wasn't really showing up as the person I wanted to be for anybody, not for my clients, not for my family, and definitely not for myself. So I needed to figure out, what am I going to do and how am I going to change it? So for me, the first thing that really helped was therapy. So when I went through a period where I found myself having days upon days where I would just be tearful and I didn't really know why, I knew that there was something up, and I knew that I needed to figure out what that was and get some support, some external support. And so therapy for me was a really big step. It gave me a safe space to unpack all of the thoughts, all of the feelings, and really relieve some of the pressure that I was putting on myself. I had support, right? I had support from family, from friends, from my coach, but I knew that this was something different. I needed a different type of support than what I already had. And so I started by identifying that I thought therapy would be helpful. And then I came across BetterHelp, the platform. And that was the way that I found a therapist that was the right person for me. It's a really super easy platform. So you go on, you put in your requirements, you put in what's going on for you, you put in your preferences in terms of someone to work with, and then they give you options. And so going into that therapy relationship, being able to have a third party external just allow me the space and the time to unpack my thoughts and then give me guidance on how I could be thinking differently, and then also tools and strategies to be able to manage the stress, because oftentimes we're operating in a space of just constant stress, like chronic stress, like ongoing stress. You know, like on a day-to-day basis, you are battling through doing the school run and managing all of the school admin, and then managing a business which takes you on an emotional roller coaster all of the time. And so your body is just constantly like dealing with all of these external factors. And if you don't have sufficient tools to be able to deal with that, it takes its toll. It takes its toll. So in therapy, it was really great to be able to have some tangible, practical things that I knew that I could pull out of the bag when I was feeling a certain way, be like, right, okay, pause, we're going to do this. And so that was super, super helpful. And I cannot advocate enough for therapy. I think we have moved into a space where people are more open and people are more cognizant of the fact that it can make such a difference and it isn't as taboo as it used to be. But I still think there's room to grow in that area for people to realize that therapy is a great thing. And for me, I'm like, since I've had therapy, I'm telling everybody, like, therapy, it was great. You should totally do it. When I was in therapy, ... So if you haven't considered it and you are somebody who is struggling a little bit with all of the demands that we have on the day-to-day basis, then check it out. Go for it. Like, have a consultation, have a first session, and see how you go. The next thing that was really helpful for me was exercise. I've always been somebody who liked to stay active. Growing up, I would constantly be playing netball. That was my game of choice, and also enjoy going to the gym and doing fun fitness workouts, like dance workouts, aerobics workouts, Zumba, that type of thing. And I've always been very active. When life got very, very busy, it's very easy for me to deprioritize the exercise. It's like, okay, I've got all of these things to do. I've got a certain amount of hours in the day. Like, I don't really have the time to exercise. I don't have the time to go to the gym, to take that time out. I need to work on my business. And what I realized during that time was exercise wasn't a nice to have, it was a necessity. Because when I did exercise, I had way more patience. I was in such better mood. I felt good. I felt energized. And when I didn't, it was the opposite. And so I realized that moving my body wasn't just about physical health. It wasn't just about making me look good or stay fit. It was also about my mental health. It was also about what the exercise could do for my brain. It's also about what the hormones that come from exercise could do for my whole being. And so my relationship with exercise then shifted from, oh, it's something that I do when I have time, to no, it's something I need to do in order for me to show up at my best. So exercise is a big, big part of that. And I know that when you're busy, it can go to the back burner, but I think figuring out how do you break it down. So rather than saying, okay, I need to exercise for a whole entire hour, or I need to do a 45-minute workout, what can you do in 20 minutes? Like, can you just go for a walk? Can you just move your body? Can you do some star jumps? Like, it doesn't have to be intense, but it does need to be there. And then the last thing I think that made a huge, huge difference for me when I was going through that period is accepting that spaciousness in my calendar was okay. And I think this is probably the most transformational for me, like having a mindset shift. I have always been a person who's been booked and busy, just busy, like constantly. If you look at my calendar, I'm jumping from one thing to another. And I remember a while ago having a coaching session with my coach, and we were talking about like all of the things that I'm trying to do and not getting done and all of that kind of thing. And she got me to pull up my calendar and show her what it was I was doing on a weekly basis. So I had my Google Calendar, which is the calendar that I live by, and everything is in there. And she was like, oh, okay, no wonder. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, no wonder you're feeling the way that you're feeling. No wonder you're not getting done what you want to get done. Your calendar is so stacked. Like, there is no white space here. There is something after something after something. And it really hit me that, yeah, there wasn't any white space. And I was taking a space on my calendar to mean I was available, when in actual fact, that isn't always the case. Just because there is a time space on your calendar doesn't mean you have energetic space for something. It doesn't mean that you are able to show up and add another thing in there. And so what that helped me to really consider and think about is, what needs to be on my calendar, and how do I factor in that spaciousness as well? How do I recognize that I can have multiple coaching calls in the day, but I do need to have some space in between? Or I can have a jam-packed day, but I do need to factor in some time in between for me to be able to like recoup before I go and do the school run. And so just being a lot more intentional about how I was spacing out the things that I have to do on my calendar was game changing. Once I allowed myself that space, I was able to slow down, be more intentional on what I was doing, the reason I was doing it. And then I started to show up way more effectively in all areas. So as a parent, as a wife, as a partner, as a business partner, as a coach, as a speaker, in all of those ways, I was able to show up differently because I gave myself permission to not be so busy. not be so busy. It's crazy, right? Like, because when you grow up and you are very, very ambitious and you're used to doing a lot of things and a lot of people rely on you, that just becomes your default. But that doesn't necessarily have to be something that you continue, and it isn't really sustainable for the long term. Like, I'm approaching 40 and I realize, I can feel it, I can see it now, that the type of energy that I had that allowed me to just go in my 30s, my early 30s, late 20s, isn't the same energy that I have now, considering I have children who are of school age, and that requires a lot of energy. So it's important to take stock and recognize that as your life shifts and your life changes, the way that you plan out your time and the way that you plot what it is that you're doing needs to change and needs to be adapted. So when it comes to you considering whether you are experiencing burnout or you're on the brink of burnout, recognize that it doesn't happen overnight. It isn't the case that you're like, okay, today I'm fine, tomorrow I'm not. Often it's like slow incremental things that you're not doing that are impacting your overall well-being, or that you're doing that. Often it's incremental things that you're doing or not doing that is impacting your overall well-being and causing you to feel depleted and have your energy reserves just tank. So a few things to look out for, like if you're feeling constantly tired, like you get enough sleep but you're still feeling tired. If you are easily irritated, that was one for me, just easily irritated. If you find yourself skipping basic self-care, you're just like, yeah, forget it, I don't need to do the things that I used to do all the time, I don't need to look after myself, I just need to keep going. Like, these are signs that you're on the brink and that you need to slow down and that you need to assess. And here's the thing, like sometimes we think we're so busy that we can't afford to slow down. But in my experience, it's happened to me, not just with burnout, but like also illness. Like, if I don't slow down and listen to what my body is telling me, my body will make me listen. I'll be laid up in the bed. I'll get sick to the point where I'm like, okay, I can't move. And we don't want that. We don't want that. Let's listen to the signs, listen to the signals that are coming from our body so that we don't get there. Because ultimately, if you want to show up in the world and you want to make the type of impact that I know you want to make, you need to be well. You need to be well to do that. So prioritizing your well-being is paramount to you thriving in your career, thriving in your relationships, thriving generally, right? You need to prioritize you as an individual and your whole self. And when we're caught up in the hustle and bustle of life and moving 100 miles an hour, it's really, really difficult to notice those signs. So make sure that you are checking in with yourself regularly and recognize your personal signs, because it's going to look different for everybody, right? So recognize you yourself, like when you start to feel like there needs to be a bit of a shift. And so let's just think about, from a practical perspective, like what should you be doing? How can you approach this? So first of all, make sure that you are priority on your list, right? Make sure that you are priority, because that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, it sounds cliche, and I've heard it so many times. Growing up, I used to hear people quote it. I've heard it so many times, but it wasn't until I had my own burnout experience that I really understood what it means to try and pour from an empty cup. Like, if the cup is empty and you try and pour from an empty cup, nothing's coming out. So if you are trying to give and you are trying to show up and you are trying to make impact and you are trying to create change and you are trying to make things better, nothing's happening if you're pouring from an empty cup. So you prioritizing yourself is not selfish. It's not you just thinking about yourself. It's actually you thinking about everybody else, because the more you pour into you, the more you have to pour into others. So make sure that you hold on to that as a mindset, right? Because it's second nature for us, particularly as women, to prioritize everybody else before ourselves. And then in actual fact, that's backwards if we want to make the most impact in the lives of other people. So that's the first thing. So prioritize yourself. The next, you need to think about what actually needs to happen to move the needle. Oftentimes we are busy, focusing on so many things and doing so much and committing to so much. But the reality is not everything that you're doing is making a difference. Not everything that you're doing is moving the needle towards where you want to go. So what actually needs to happen? Are you doing things that are moving you towards where you want to get to, or are you just busy? Busy is not the same as productive. So take time to assess, am I being busy or am I being productive? And the other thing is boundaries. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Don't be afraid to say no, and don't be afraid to articulate how you're feeling about situations and about requests. I remember shortly after I started on my therapy journey, I was asked by my husband what I wanted to do for my birthday. And at that time, I was feeling so depleted, and there was just a lot going on. And I said to him, in all honesty, I would like to just go book into a spa hotel and have 24 hours by myself. And he was kind of taken aback by that. His initial response was, by yourself? Like, you don't want me to come? Like, I understand leaving the kids behind, but why are you going to leave me behind? And my thing was, I just wanted to have 24 hours where I was nobody's anything. I wasn't anybody's wife. I wasn't anybody's mom. I wasn't anybody's coach. I wasn't anybody's client. I wasn't anybody's anything. I just wanted to be. And I took that time. As much as I felt guilty, I felt so guilty. I felt bad. I felt like, oh, my family wants to spend my birthday with me and I want to go off and do something else. But I knew I needed it. And so I asked for it and I pursued that and I did it. And when I tell you, it was the best decision, because I had such an amazing just 24 hours of just doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted to do it. And when I finished and when I came back, I was so full. My cup was full. It was running over. I was able to spend time with my kids and enjoy them again. I was able to have patience. Patience is a virtue. Like, it's so important. It was so different from how I felt before I went, and it was only 24 hours. So sometimes we can anticipate how people are going to react to our requests. And then because we're anticipating that they're going to have a negative reaction, we don't do it. We don't pursue it. When actually my husband was like, I get it. It's fine. Go ahead. And so I will always remember that anytime I'm reluctant to kind of really ask for what it is that I need, I remember that scenario, because it was more important for me to go than it was for me to stay in that moment. It was more important for me to go than it was for me to stay, because the impact for everybody after that was huge. So know that your boundaries are your boundaries. Saying no is okay, and do what you need to do. Do what you need to do when you need to do it, and listen to yourself. I knew, I was like, yeah, I need to take a beat. And it was okay. It was all good. So boundaries. And then last thing I would say is seek support. So like I mentioned, I always have a coach. I was in therapy for a while. So it doesn't have to be that kind of intervention. It doesn't have to be therapy or coaching, but it could just be a friend who will hold you accountable and who will support you. But we weren't designed to be islands. We weren't designed to figure this stuff out on our own. And as we have evolved in society and the way that we do things, we often live our lives in a way more separate way than was originally intended, right? Like, the community element is so important, and having help and support is what helps people to get through and manage all of the demands of life. And we live in such a fast-paced world now that taking the time to slow down and seeking out the support that you need is vital. And that support is support at home, support in the workplace, support in your social life. Like, we need support. So looking for that, seeking that out, and making sure that you are getting what you need is really, really game changing. So just to wrap up on this conversation, like, burnout doesn't have to be part of your story. You can pursue ambitions and you can do big things whilst taking care of yourself. I think oftentimes, and I know this is very true for me, I had the assumption when I first started building my business that when you build a business, you just have to work. You have to work through the night. That's what's required to get it done. You have to do that. And for some people that works, but not for everybody. And it doesn't have to be that reality. The thing to remember, if you are building something of your own, is that it's of your own. It's of your own. So you get to build it how you want to build it. You get to build it how it needs to be built. So if you are somebody who is a parent and you have children that are looking up to you and you're looking after them, you cannot build your business in the very same way as somebody who is single, right? Like the time that you have, the energy that you have is going to be different. And so make sure that when you're looking at examples and you're looking for people to aspire after, that you're looking for people who have a similar journey to you. Similarly, if you are in the corporate world and you are climbing the ladder and you are moving your way up to leadership, look for examples of people who have been able to do that whilst juggling the similar demands of life that you have. Right? It doesn't just have to be children. It could be, you might have caring responsibilities. There might be other things that are going on in your life. And sometimes we can make ourselves feel bad. We can make ourselves feel behind because the examples that we're looking at are not examples that are fully aligned with the lifestyle that we have, right? The examples are not fully aligned. And, you know, social media, listen, social media will have you in spins in your mind around what you should be doing and how far behind you are and all of that, because you're only seeing the highlight reel. And you've probably heard this time and time again, but I don't know that it sinks in for all of us, right? It's like the highlight reel is out there. We see that, but we don't see the behind the scenes. And we are judging ourselves or comparing ourselves based on what we see, but not the whole picture. And so remind yourself of where you are, remind yourself of who you are, remind yourself of how far you've come, and give yourself a pat on the back. Like, can we just celebrate? Can we sometimes take a pause and celebrate and be like, do you know what? Well done. Well done. You've shown up. You showed out. You've consistently been doing things. You've consistently been committing to X, Y, Z. You've consistently been showing up for this person and that person and that person. Like, come on. We don't do it enough. Honestly, we don't do it enough. And I'm that person. I'm that coach for my clients. He's like the biggest cheerleader. I'm like, okay, I hear all of this, but are we acknowledging what you just did though? Are we acknowledging how far you've come? Because I think it's important for us to celebrate the milestones. It's important for us to recognize where we've come from. It's important for us to show gratitude for what we've been able to achieve so that our headspace is in a place of positivity rather than negativity. Like if we're like always thinking about what we haven't done and how much further we've got to go and what we would like to do, we're really not taking in what we've achieved. We're really not taking it in. And so what's the point of chasing new accolades if you can't even acknowledge the ones that you've already been able to achieve? All right, I'm going to stop there because, you know, I get a bit ranty and I get a bit excited, but I hope this is helpful for you. And I hope you take this as your sign, your permission, your encouragement to take a pause, take stock, slow down, take some time for yourself, okay? So you can replenish, recharge, and then you can go out and give more to the world. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep moving towards your career goals.